Friends, let me first of all congratulate the Economic Times, not for organizing this today's event, but in a way spearheading a campaign for more than 2 decades now to make India a very leading economy of the world. And to realize that goal, what was needed was, and what is even now needed in small numbers, is how to change the mindsets of people. And also speaking after the electrifying address by our Honorable Prime Minister yesterday. I think now, having said what he said yesterday, what is left to a person like me is to say yes, like in the marriages I do. I need to say yes, we'll achieve everything that he has said because that's a broad vision. It's a duty and the responsibility of a person like me to put in place all the strategies, the policies to realize that big dream. And if you really look at it, this is a very good, well set out target for us that we should be a $20 trillion economy in the next few years. So I'm very sure in the next few years' time, you'll see a change which is already now underway, but in a significant way will get manifested. And I'm not surprised to see that everybody now in India as well as others are really getting excited about the message that the Prime Minister is sending. And I think now it's a responsibility of all of us to respond to it in a way that we achieve a bigger target that is set for ourselves. Thank you very much.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, Professor Bhagwati and other friends, my warm greetings to all of you. We in India are in the midst of a great mission mode program which we call Digital India. Before I speak about this program, let me briefly tell you what is the communication scenario of India. We have got 900 million mobile phones in India. They have grown with the government in spite of the roadblocks by the government. There are a lot of legacy issues. We have got nearly 300 million internet connectivity in India. The IT profile of India is too well known, as you may know. Most of the Fortune companies have their back-end offices in India. We are projected to reach almost 100 billion by the year 2025. We began with certain early harvest program. I would like to share that very briefly with you. We launched a portal, MyGov, where we sought the response of the people of India on issues like Ganga cleaning, governance, environment, after we came to power about 7 months ago. And within a fortnight, we received 700,000 suggestions. We are interacting with all those friends, and a dedicated cell in the PM also interacts with them. This whole logo of Swachh Bharat Abhiyan, Gandhi's two aspects, was designed by them. The name Jan Dhan Yojana was suggested by them. We asked them to design e-greetings for the Prime Minister. Within a week, we received 3,000 designs. And the Prime Minister of India ended up sending 4 million e-greeting on Independence Day, 15th of August. We could see Indians are keen to get connected, to be engaged in the process of development. Digital India is basically designed as a game changer exercise. I am very convinced, ladies and gentlemen, that India is sitting at the cusp of a big IT revolution. And as the Prime Minister has said, a great mission statement, IT plus IT is equal to IT. India's talent plus information technology is equal to India tomorrow. That's what we are working about. And the second is 3D, democracy, demography, and demand. with Professor Bhagwati and other eminent people sitting here, I did not tell about the demography of India. All of you know that. And the third is 3S, is speed, scale, and skill. That's how we are doing. I seek your good wishes. Thanks a lot. Namaskar.
Good afternoon. Now, Dr. Subramanian, would you like to revisit your eclipse thesis, given the different ability of the US and China to handle adverse global situations?
Remember, the thesis in Eclipse, there was a positive diagnosis and a policy prescription. The positive diagnosis was that, there's a weakening West and the weakening US and a rising China. So that fundamentally alters the open system and the way we've had it. But the policy prescription there was that, we needed much more multilateral approaches to deal with the rise of China. Before President Obama's last visit here, I actually had briefed him. And what I said was that, India, like the United States, has an issue with Chinese exchange rate policy. And the interesting thing was in this diagnosis was that, the US needed to realize that it couldn't take China on alone and that it needed a bunch of like-minded people to address what were common concerns on Chinese exchange rate policies. Equally for India, it had to realize that, that it mattered but didn't matter too much. It had to be part of a coalition to help deal with China, but it couldn't just retreat and say, well, the US is still the hegemon, the US should take on China. So I think that diagnosis, is that prescriptive thing is fundamentally, unaltered. I still think we need multilateral approaches. I still think we need a strong United States, but I think we need a strong United States, but also backed by, a genuinely healthy, economically healthy, in the sense of, gains spread across the spectrum, because that's what's going to underpin its commitment to openness.
Abhijit, when the US is the fastest growing economy in the world, others have slowed down considerably. It obviously has an impact on development. The process of people getting out of poverty that has been happening on an unprecedented scale. Now, how will that be affected?
I'm one of these people who believes that we do trade a fair amount now. We're much more open. I think this is a very difficult world to be negotiating right now. That's the first, I think the first order fact. And I'm going to predict that it's going to be a difficult world for a long time. I think one of the things we're going to are beginning to see is an adjustment to the fact that Europe is aging, it's not having children. I think the long term on Europe and Japan, with fertility rates often of 1.5, 1.7, it's just somehow that story, the productivity growth isn't big enough to make that story work out. So I don't see how these economies are going to continue to draw the weight they have in the world economy. They are not very comfortable with it. That would be, I think some of them have more immigration. I was surprised. Italy seems to have more immigration than one would imagine. But I think in general, if you right now, the reaction to what happened in Paris is not going to be lots more openness to immigration in Europe. So I'm just very pessimistic about these low demographics economies. I think they are in the middle of what's going to be a long-term readjustment of expectations. And I think we should be prepared for that.
Professor Krugman, one specific problem. If the US is the fastest growing large economy, and it actually wants to act as and serves as the engine of global growth, it will once again mean the US building up a huge current account deficit, and once again large capital flows moving to the US, again creating the liquidity glut and the problems we saw during the financial crisis. Do you think this is a possibility?
I think not. So first thing to say is when we talk about the U.S. Being the growth leader, that is really more of a reflection of the failure of other countries than of the success of the United States. If you want to if you compare where we are in America now with where 7 years ago we thought we would be at this point, it's actually been an enormous economic disaster. growth has fallen far short. Employment has fallen far short. It's just that we're relieved to see that things are finally improving definitively. But yeah, I mean, let's put it this way. It seems to me that to be worried about the next bubble is way premature. We're still very much suffering from the old one. We have in no sense recovered from that. So that's where we are right now.
Ultimately, what sense we get is that unless we get our own house in order first, there isn't much recourse that the rest of the world can do to help us get our growth together. Thank you. Thanks. Thank you.
Honorable Minister and friends, lots of friends here. Let me just say that the approach of the Indian governments, different governments, to poverty reduction is something which has been the defining point of India. It doesn't really matter how you measure the poverty, because it's all around us. And, you can get a PhD for measuring poverty, but it's going to do nothing for poverty reduction. Of course, we need to measure to see whether, in fact, we're having an impact. So let me just mention a few things. One is the role of IT. And that's very important, because the Prime Minister wants modern technology. And I think he correctly pointed out something which, some of us had long observed, which is that IT, instead of dividing people into haves and have-nots, actually has been unifying. Because a lot of people are now, poor people are able to access know-how. And so democratically also, when a peasant in the village is able to find out what the prices are, the stranglehold of the intermediaries is reduced. And so democracy is also strengthened. And I think that's clearly what this government believes, all of you. And the Prime Minister provides the basic lead in having, this is what he wants very much to do. The second thing, of course, is many people raise the issue of women. So once they get empowered, by being educated, they really take over. Like all of us who are professors know that women actually do much better in the class than the boys do. And so, and that's really, one has to change attitudes and then translate it into policies. But I'm completely confident that's what this is, because his instincts are in the right place and he will do the right thing and really get us going. Trade is part of Gujarat's DNA, and he's going to scale it up. He's got to take up with President Obama the fact that Obama, Kerry, and everybody in the United States talks continuously against outsourcing, which means importing from us. Because outsourcing is a code word for India. You don't outsource to China or New Zealand and so on. And if you keep saying that, outsourcing is bad, evil, treasonable, and so on, that builds up sentiment against India. They have to settle down and tell the Americans, because that's the American way. Americans will do things for one community, but they won't do it for another comparable unless that one also wants it. Whereas we are used to the the English system, where if it's done for one community, it's automatically extended to everybody. And so I think this is something we need, particularly if we're going to talk about skilling up our people, exporting and so on. How will you export if there is continuous sentiment against being cultivated by these people? Then on competition and regulation, first, I don't know what cooperative federalism means, but to me, it is really regionalism, but regionalism working through competition, meaning you do something, I see you, and it's not just monkey see, monkey do, but it is also the fact that you're moving ahead. So the Prime Minister himself moved ahead in Gujarat on trade and investment, cutting down the amount of time spent on approving things. So he's in the process of scaling it up. So I think the Prime Minister, because again of his own personal experience, that he was doing it ahead of time, before anybody else was, that is really something. It just fits in with his own experience. And so I think that is another thing which I think we can expect from him. And finally, I do want to say that the notion that poverty requires intervention beyond just the growth process. So first, growth pulls up people into gainful employment. So it's a radical strategy which you understand from the way, the Prime Minister and all many of the ministers we've heard talk. That is not a conservative trickle-down strategy, because a stagnant economy won't do anything for you, generally speaking. Growth is not an end in itself necessarily, but it is really a strategic instrument. Secondly, it also generates revenues at any given tax rate. Once you get the revenues, then you can spend them for social spending, all right? So that is really, it enables you to spend the money which you don't have otherwise. And so we have to generate the revenues. Just saying, I'm for social spending or redistribution, that's a misleading phrase, that's not going to help anyone. If you have the revenues and you're able to spend them, then questions arise. Do you just give subsidies to people? I don't think it's a good idea. And that's where I think the Prime Minister was speaking in a certain context, as I said, about kerosene, etc. But that's one way you can give money away to the poor. The other one, which is more creative, is to say, look, I'm going to do it for social spending on healthcare, education, about which we heard quite a lot of interesting ideas. And the third issue, which is, again, where people like Professor Sen are wrong, in my opinion, they assume that because it's government money, that it should be spent on government-operated healthcare clinics, schools, and so on. These are generally better, but nobody turns up to do it. So a lot of people are spending privately on things. And I've seen pictures of payments on which private schools are being run on a shoestring basis. I would say, look, give value added to them. Give them textbooks, whatever, to improve the quality, right, of what their people are doing. So these are the three choices, and I'm in favor of the last one, because we should not rule out, the private operation and that. So I would say growth, pulling up, the pull-up strategy, revenues, right, for social spending, and 3, democracy. That's our special message to the world and to ourselves. So I hope, having heard all of you, with all the ministers, I'm very optimistic, I'm delighted. And I'm glad I'm not part of that, because I'm too old to have that energy to do it. Thank you.
This time we are having a focus approach. We are having a vision. Now we are preparing clear-cut targets by 2022. We want it to be among 3 in the country by 2022. 2029, we want it to be number 1. We are preparing our vision document up to 2050. By 2050, our Andhra Pradesh will be the best destination for global citizens. That is how we are planning. And also, if you see sea coast, that is the biggest advantage. For Southeast Asia, Andhra Pradesh will be the logistics hub, and for India, it will be a gateway. And also pharma, automobile, agro-processing, and also infrastructure projects, we are concentrating in a big way. Now we are going in a big way for Digital India. Within 2 years' time, already we have created a corporation. We are creating a corporation with the support of Government of India. Within 2 years' time, we wanted to reach every home with a 20 Mbps bandwidth connectivity. And also we are concentrating hardware and also Digital India. For every citizen, you must have access with all contents, what all you require. That is how we are planning technology. Technology is the one thing every citizen has to adopt it. It is for transparency, it is for accountability, and also for knowledge, for everything. It is a very, very important now. What I am thinking, for governments also, you wanted to develop in a big way. You want to have a leapfrog development, you have to adopt technology. Now Aadhaar account is there. This is one of the best advantage in India. If you seed all your transactions to Aadhaar account, transparency will come, all bogus we can eliminate, and also we can bring accountability with the technology and also good policies. And at the same time, process is important. Not only create idea, that idea how